and welcome back to Nat'sNook. In this video, I want to take a closer look in the Nook and focus on a most recent read of mine that I found to be very interesting, to the point where it needed its own video. I mentioned the book towards the end of my most recent video. I'm going to link that up above so that you can check it out if you already haven't. The book is Providence by Caroline Kepnes. You may be familiar with Caroline Kepnes' work with the You series, You and Hidden Bodies being the sequel. I believe she is working on a third novel for that series, but apart from that, she has also written Providence. Now, my emotions towards this book in my previous video was very, they weren't great. They weren't great. I am slightly disappointed with this book, but that's going to be for a whole new video because I have some rambling and ranting to do about this book, Miss Kepnes. Okay? Sorry, I had a moment. I did not feel great about this read, and I still kind of don't. But I'm just gonna get into it and tell you guys why. Keep in mind that there are spoilers, so if you don't want me to spoil this book for you, I advise you to exit off this video. But if you don't mind, keep watching. I want to start with my Goodreads review on this book. Now, it was something that I had to ponder long and hard about because I didn't want to do too much criticizing. I didn't want to talk about the good parts that I enjoyed, but there was a lot I was confused on and a lot that I just did not overall enjoy. So I'm just going to read it for you all. And reading this review will also help give you all a general sense of, I guess, the points that I'm going to talk about in this video regarding my review on the book. I gave this book a 3-star rating because the multiple genres in which Kepnes tried to write the story around didn't quite work for me. You have romance, crime, thriller, mystery, and the most prominent genre or theme, horror. I love the idea of the main male character, John, starting off as this kid who's a nerd and weakling that later becomes this physically fit and handsome older teen. The only part that throws me off is how that change for him happens. He's kidnapped. Missing for 4 years, a former teacher who's also a mad scientist practically makes John into a humanized Frankenstein. I like but also don't like the placement of romance in the novel. You have Chloe, the only friend of John's before he becomes a hunk, that goes through this wavering love for John while he's missing and even after they reconnected. She spent years upon years practically obsessing over him, his story, and wanting to know what happened to him. There are chapters where she wants to confess her love or comes so close to finally making all of her John fantasies come to life, while simultaneously telling herself to put John in the past and move on to other lovers. That kid, Carrick, was a mess. I hated his character. I'm sorry, but I really did hate that kid. It pained me that we don't get the relationship closure we deserved. John overcoming his deadly powers and him and Chloe finally getting the love they always yearned for from each other. Part of me wishes that there was a cure for whatever Mr. Roger did to John, or some type of character development where John is able to control his emotions, his emotional drawn powers. But I guess that ties to the saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. As I read, I felt like there were parts of the plot that I was completely missing due to my lack of knowledge on certain stories by H.P. Lovecraft and him as an author in general. The Dunwich Horror by him was a heavily referenced novel, and anytime it was brought up in Providence when talking about what happened to John and why he is the way he is, those parts kind of lost me. In the end, I like how the point of the urge of knowing is not always needing to be known, and that you can't overcome the obstacles you had no control in creating. Now that I think about it, I do believe that in my last video I said I gave Providence a 4.5-star rating. I gave this a 4.5 star. I'm here to tell you in this video that I most certainly did lie. That was my mistake though. I might have been looking at another rating for another book, I'm not sure, but definitely 3 stars. Let me start off with the fact that part of me when reading the book felt like there was going to be some sense of the way she wrote You and Hidden Bodies, but then I realized that those three books are completely separate. You and Hidden Body is more of a psychological thriller and more of a, it has a lot more romance than Providence did, for sure. While Providence is more of a, it tried to be like supernatural romance crime thriller. I really don't know. When reading You and Hidden Bodies, those stories worked for me. I have done reviews on both books, and I will also link those videos up above so you can check those out. But when reading Providence, part of me really wanted to get the sense that I was getting from reading You and Hidden Bodies, but part of me knew that I wasn't, because it was a completely different story, written for, you know, completely different genres and purposes. So I read some of the reviews on Goodreads, and some people definitely thought the same thing that I did, that, you know, Miss Kepnes was gonna write Providence the way she wrote You and Hidden Bodies, but clearly that was not the case. And so some of us that believe that definitely let ourselves down when we read Providence. I know I kind of did. So having high hopes, you know. So when talking about the genres of Providence, I mentioned romance, crime, thriller, mystery, and most importantly, horror. And I never thought I'd read a book that would have all of those genres in one. I'm a sucker for romance novels, for sure. Mystery and crime thriller, I'm really just getting into more. Horror, I've never really been a big fan of reading horror. I believe that the only horror that I did read growing up was R.L. Stein Goosebumps, but that was about it. And then I was barely even allowed to read that, or was really interested in reading that, but that's it. Do I know of any horror novelists? One could come to mind, and of course Stephen King, but that's about it. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of horror, and who's to know if I ever will be. But yeah, that genre with Providence, or like those aspects, just really didn't hit for me. It was a miss, for sure. Like I said, the romance placement in the novel was it was hard. It was hard for me. When reading it, it seemed like it was hard for Kepnes to write it, but it might have come easy to her. Because you have this kid that becomes this entity of not being able to be around humans without practically killing them, based off of his strong emotions, and all of that coming from the fact that he was kidnapped, and he was like this science experiment that he believes went wrong. The former teacher that, you know, made those changes to him, felt like he was doing the kid a favor. He was doing John a favor, but John was like, dude, you messed up my life completely. Especially when it came to his and Chloe's relationship. When he got back after being kidnapped for 4 long years, the first thing he wanted to do was go and confess his love to Chloe, but he couldn't do that without hurting her or hurting the people around her. And it was a number of people that he hurt, that he knew, that she knew, or that were just complete strangers. And it was a mystery trying to figure out how and why, which also kind of baffled me a bit, because I understood his powers, but I didn't understand his powers. Like, they weren't really clear. It was like, okay, if he gets overly emotional or gets like really overwhelmed with like lust or happiness or whatever, he basically like kills the person that I guess he's interacting with a heart attack. Like, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. I don't know if that was like a clever way for Miss Kepnes to like write how his powers work. I don't know if she thought I was like really clever, but it was confusing to me. Like, genuinely, I was confused. But I do like the whole long distance relationship thing, and like the whole sense of, we can't be together because I'm deadly, like I'm lethal, and I need to love you from a distance so that I can show your safety. Like, I liked that. Not romantic, but you know, it was okay. And the whole, you know, like internal battle with Chloe, like loving John, hating John because he was away, and then he came back, and then he went away again, and then it was just like he would call her and not say anything to the phone, and she'll just be like waiting for his text messages, his call, his emails, and it was just like, sis, move on. And then when she would move on, he would pop back up again, and it was just like this, like I said, this wavering feeling of the Chloe and John ship, and that ship just kept sinking. Like they would build a new boat and it would just sink over and over and over until they realized that ship, they're not meant to board. They're not meant to board at all in the end. But you know, there'll be passengers from a nice distance. So they'll be on separate ships. I mentioned this character named Carrick, this kid, this prick, I bully. Like I can't stand him. And the way, well, I mean, it gives a nice little triangle with Chloe, you know, like still loving John, and then having Carrick, this guy she likes, and uses to like get over John, to the point where like they meet up after like no contact for so many years, and they kind of start a new relationship, and they get engaged. But then here comes John inserting himself into the picture once again, and it's like a wrap, to the point where Carrick snaps. And he's like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this John kid. He's been here since 9th grade. He has to go. He has to go. So yeah, you can imagine how that ended. Well, Carrick called himself trying to kill John, but not doing a great job, because John is indestructible. Like, yeah, he is. And then we have the former teacher that does this experimenting on John and creates John into this monster that goes MIA for the rest of the book until the very end, and we still don't get an explanation as to why he did it, but because of the fact that he was doing John a favor, he was trying to make him stronger, he was trying to make him the person that he knew he could be. Why? For what? I wish we got more on Roger's character, like I really do. Because all we got was the fact that he worked here, he worked there, he got fired from here, he was known to do some crazy experiments. I needed like a full-blown background check. Like, we got a peek into a background check, but I need like a stacked document pile of like who this guy is, what his problem is, and why he experimented on kids. Why he kidnapping them in the middle of the woods and doing stuff to them. I need to note this. It's like so many unanswered questions when reading this book, that I'm sure I'm not the only one that got those. It was like after reading a chapter or a few chapters, I had a question here, I had a question there. I'm just like, Miss Kepnes. I was really hoping those last few chapters were going to save this book, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. Like I said, having high hopes. Having high hopes is where readers mess up. Having high hopes really sucks. It does. Okay, now to like the root of all of this, to the root of this entire maddening mess that I have with this book, is the number of times Kepnes name drops H.P. Lovecraft in the Dunwich Horror. I had to do research. The first time she mentioned it, I was like, oh, okay, you know, a novel or author I don't know anything about, but you know, like, I get the gist. But then she just kept putting it in the book. It was here, it was there. It was a whole convention in Providence for H.P. Like, is that a thing? Is that really a thing? Or is that just a thing she wrote for the book? I'm not sure what to believe anymore. Like, is he that popular? Like, I know the author was from Providence, Rhode Island, and like I think that's like the setting of most of his books, but like, does he really have like an actual fan base? Like, dude was a prominent author in the 20s, 1920s, like during the time of Fitzgerald. Like, are those H.P. Lovecraft conventions a thing? Because it was 2 in the book, and I'm like, yo, I really wanted to know how this tied in to why John was the way he was. I'm sure, like, Kepnes thought she did a good job in explaining it, but I personally, like I said, a lot of those points went over my head because I am not familiar with the author. I am not familiar with the genre of horror really at all, and so most of those points, they lost me. Those parts of the books, those chapters, I was kind of lost in. And even like with John, John, he read the book. He read the Dunwich Horror in Providence, and to the point where he reread the book and reread the book and reread the book because he was confused himself. I guess he got to a point where he understood. I don't know. Maybe I read that part and it didn't register with me. I don't know. But yeah. And when I did my research on H.P. Lovecraft, I can see why I wasn't familiar with his work. I read some stuff. I heard some stuff too. I did research on Google. I even did some research on Twitter because, you know, the book community is really heavy on Twitter. And I was just like, oh, so he was that person. Oh, that's what he wrote. Oh, okay. Yeah. Not my cup of tea. Not my reading preference. No. Don't mean to bash anyone who is into H.P. Lovecraft or into horror altogether, but like, just not what I prefer to read. No. With the closure that we get in the book, it's not what I expected, but I guess, you know, sometimes you always can't have your happily ever after. So inevitably John and Chloe don't get together because John is still the way he is. He's this killer human being, and Chloe is, you know, someone he wants to protect, but he can't do that in person. He also wants to continue to love her, and it has to be from a distance. So it's just like one of those things that you can't fix, even when you're the one that writes the book and just chooses to be stubborn and not give the readers a happily ever after. But like I said, sometimes, you know, it's like that. There was no cure, you know? And then Roger dies, so it's just like he was the only one that probably knew the answers to questions that I'm sure a lot of people had when finding out, you know, like about what John was and what he was capable of doing and what he had done. So yeah, that was great. The one guy that created the madness died. Great. But nonetheless, I loved parts of the book. I loved the parts of the book. Chloe, she definitely deserved better development, if you ask me. And like I said, John, my man should have got cured. That's all I know. There are other characters in the book that I did not mention in this video. Like I said, I didn't want to give too much away. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the parts of the book and the chapters that really stood out to me the most. And just certain stuff I was kind of confused on. I'm gonna do this. If anyone of you who watched this video is familiar with H.P. Lovecraft's work, and has read the Dunwich Horror, or, you know, kind of skimmed it for like a class or something, I don't know. Comment down below like a synopsis of what it might be about and how this kid that was, you know, kidnapped and done experiments on, like, kind of I think the character that he connects himself to in the Dunwich Horror is Wilbur. And I believe that Wilbur is like this mutation that's born, and like he just kills everyone in the town, something like that. But I don't remember how he does it. I don't know if it's like a physical power or what John had, powers based off of his emotions when they get too strong. I really don't know. But this has been my review on Providence by Caroline Kepnes. If you read this, and if you've read You and Hidden Bodies, don't expect for the books to be the same. Like, they're drastically different. Drastically. I set myself up a little bit, but it's okay. I still read it. So, yeah. The romance was what kept me going. Because I really thought that Chloe and John were going to be in game. I was like, oh yeah, John going to get cured. He going to be good. But no. And sometimes it's like that. It be like that sometimes. So, but yeah. If you're into romance and mystery and crime thriller and especially horror, I definitely check Providence out. And if you are familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, then this just may be the book for you. Wasn't necessarily the book for me, but this is the one time Miss Kepnes disappointed me. The one time. But like I said, it's probably my fault because I'm not into some of the material that's in here. So she did her part by writing it. I did my part by reading it. That's all that matters, okay? Alright, well, I will be seeing you guys in the Nook next time. Bye, guys.